Hey guys, tonight we're floating barefoot into one of the most photographed and least understood corners of modern history, the daily life of a woman inside the 1960s hippie counterculture, where the flowers were real, the freedom was advertised, and the dishes somehow were always hers. Not the magazine version, not the festival poster, not the gauzy slow motion of a couple twirling in a field. No, the real one, with the brown rice, the leaking shacks, the free clinic, and a man named Sky explaining that property is an illusion while asking you for bus fare. Before we drift off, thank you so much for being here. If this channel helps you sleep, tapping like and subscribe keeps it going. And tell me, while you are down there, the single strangest health food anyone ever talked you into swallowing. Now get comfortable. Lights off, fan on, blanket pulled up, and maybe keep a snack nearby that is not, under any circumstances, 10 consecutive days of plain brown rice. Who exactly was cooking for all those beautiful free spirits? Why did a movement built on smashing every rule somehow keep the one where the woman does all the laundry? What the peace and love generation smelled like up close, and why the answer is mostly patchouli? Did anyone out there ever just want a hot bath and a closed door? Why did liberation keep handing women a baby, a garden, and a man at a meeting? And seriously, who was holding the toddler during the revolution? Congratulations. You just woke up on a mattress on the floor of a crash pad in San Francisco, 1967. There are 11 strangers in the room. Someone is playing a guitar badly in the corner, your feet hurt from going barefoot on principle, and the communal pot is empty again, which everyone has decided is somehow your problem. Good luck. You wake up on a bare mattress on the floor of an apartment that belongs to no one you can name. There are 11 other people in the room, some of whom arrived after you fell asleep, and some of whom will be gone before you wake again tomorrow. The mattress is shared on a rotation nobody wrote down but everybody enforces. Your first task of the day is the same as your last task of the night, which is to establish, gently and without seeming uptight, that the patch of floor under you is, for now, yours. The apartment is called a crash pad, which is a generous name for a room that has decided to function as a train station. People arrive, people leave, nobody signs anything. The whole arrangement runs on a system of trust that works beautifully until two people want the same 6 feet of carpet, at which point it works like a Renaissance court, with alliances, grievances, and a very long memory. The rent is paid, when it is paid, by someone who is not here and may be a rumour. You contribute by being useful, which in practice means cleaning up after a population that treats dishes as someone else's spiritual journey. The sink has achieved a kind of permanent geology. There are mugs in there forming their own civilization, complete with agriculture. The smell could rent itself out as a deterrent. There is a man asleep across the doorway named Cosmic Dave, who is not cosmic and whose name is Gerald. Cosmic Dave guards the door the way a cat guards a sunbeam, which is to say he is technically present and offering nothing. You step over him on your way to the bathroom, which is shared by everyone in the building and respects no one. The line for it begins forming around now and dissolves around never. Consider the rotation. Floor space is allocated by an invisible hierarchy that everyone insists does not exist, because hierarchy is the enemy and we are all equal here. And yet the good corner, warm, safe and sheltered, away from the window that does not close, somehow always belongs to whichever man has been here longest. You sleep nearer the draft. This is not a rule. It is simply how the molecules keep arranging themselves. What you have, instead of a lease, is a reputation. You are known as someone who does not steal, does not freak out, and can be relied upon to find food. That reputation is your only asset, and you protect it like a credit score, which is funny, because the entire point of being here was to escape exactly that kind of accounting. The girl beside you is 16 and arrived last night from Ohio with a knapsack and a head full of magazine articles. She does not know that the floor has politics. She will learn. You give her half your blanket, because someone once gave you half of theirs, and because the only economy in this room that actually works is the one nobody talks about, the quiet one run by women handing each other small mercies. Morning in the crash pad is not gentle. It is a slow negotiation conducted in whispers over who gets the warm spot, who finishes the heel of bread, who pretends not to notice that the bathroom has been occupied for 40 minutes by a man having a breakthrough. You navigate all of it before you have eaten a thing. The Freedom brochure did not mention the negotiation. The Freedom brochure did not mention mornings at all. You fold your corner of blanket. You stake your small claim for tonight by leaving your bag in the dry spot and you step over Gerald toward whatever the day has decided to withhold. The mattress will be someone else's by noon. You have learned not to love it. You have learned not to love most of the things here, which is a strange lesson to be taught by a movement that put love on every poster. You are hungry, and the food is free, which means you walk to the panhandle in the late afternoon and wait. The diggers serve from enormous milk cans, and before you are allowed to eat, you have to step through a large yellow wooden frame that someone is holding up at the front of the line. You do not ask why. You step through the frame, you hold out your bowl, and you accept whatever stew has been assembled that day from whatever the produce market threw out that morning. The frame is the point, apparently. It is called the free frame of reference, and stepping through it is supposed to change how you see the world. What it mostly changes is the angle of the wind, which is colder on the other side. But you do it. Everyone does it. There is a particular human willingness to perform a small ritual in exchange for soup, and the diggers understood this with the clarity of people who have run a kitchen. The stew itself is a democracy. Everything goes in. Today there are onions, cabbage, some heroic potatoes, and a meat that has chosen to remain anonymous. The flavour is best described as present. It is the kind of stew that does not seek to impress you, only to keep you alive until tomorrow, which, to be fair, it manages. The milk cans hold 22 gallons each, and they were, according to legend, liberated from an industrial dairy by men who considered theft from a corporation to be a form of poetry. The stew is ladled out by a woman named Marigold, who stirs the can with a paddle roughly the size of an oar and has the forearms of a Roman galley rower. Marigold feeds 200 people a day. Marigold has never been in a single photograph of this movement, because the photographers are all pointing their cameras at the men with the guitars. This is the thing about the free food. It is genuinely free, genuinely kind, and one of the warmest things happening in the whole neighbourhood. It is also, like most warm things here, cooked and served and cleaned up by women, while the philosophy of it is explained to journalists by men. The poster says revolution. The ladle says lunch. You eat standing up, because there is nowhere to sit and because sitting suggests a permanence the day cannot promise. Around you is the entire census of the Haight, runaways and dreamers and a few people who are simply lost in the ordinary way. A man beside you is explaining to no one that this stew is proof that money is obsolete. He is eating his third bowl. The stew, you note, was bought, cooked, and carried by people who very much still need money. Now, the free food does something subtle to your sense of yourself. It is a gift, and a gift you cannot return makes you a person who receives, and receiving every day, with nothing to give back but your presence, wears a small groove in the spirit. You start looking for ways to contribute. You start, without quite deciding to, drifting toward the cans, toward the chopping, toward Marigold and her oar. This is how it begins. This is how a woman who came here to be free ends up, 3 weeks later, holding the paddle. The meal lasts as long as the cans do, and then the line dissolves and the park goes back to being a park. The frame gets carried off by 2 boys who treat it like a holy relic. Marigold scrapes the cans, alone, into the dusk. You could help her. You probably will. The pull toward the unpaid, unthanked, absolutely essential work is, you are starting to notice, the strongest current in this entire free and currentless paradise. You walk home full, which is not nothing. In a neighbourhood where children faint from hunger on the sidewalk, a warm bowl is a real and serious kindness. You just wish, licking the spoon, that the kindness did not so reliably arrive in a woman's hands and leave on a man's reputation. You are stirring a pot large enough to bathe a toddler in, because at some point in the last hour it was decided, without a vote and without your input, that you would be the one cooking tonight. The men are in the other room discussing the nature of freedom. The pot contains rice, lentils, and a philosophy of abundance that does not extend to anyone helping you lift it. You stir. The meal that feeds 20 people will be assembled, served, and cleaned up by the 3 or 4 women who never quite managed to leave the kitchen. Nobody assigned you this. That is the genius of it. There was no chore wheel, no schedule, no boss handing down a shift. There was simply a moment when everyone got hungry and looked around the room, and the looking somehow always lands on a woman, the way water always finds the lowest point. You are the lowest point. You have been elected by gravity. The pot itself has a personality, and the personality is stubborn. It scorches if you look away and goes gluey if you do not. You learn its moods the way you would learn a difficult co-worker, except this co-worker is cast iron and could double as an anchor. Lifting it off the heat is a two-woman job that you, tonight, are performing alone, with a technique that involves a towel, a prayer, and the lower back you will be hearing about for a week. Then there are the lentils. Lentils are the load-bearing wall of commune cuisine, cheap and filling and capable of stretching to feed whoever wanders in. And someone always wanders in. The head count you cooked for at 5 has become a different number by 6, because 3 seekers arrived and a man brought a friend who brought a dog, and the dog, you are informed, is also vegetarian. You add water, you add more rice. The pot expands to meet demand like a very tired accordion. In the next room, the discussion of freedom has reached a passionate stage. You can hear it. Someone has said the word society twice and the word energy 4 times. Not one of them has said the word dinner, because dinner, to them, is a thing that materializes, a natural feature of the evening, like dusk. They have no idea it has an author. You are the author. You are anonymous. Beside you works Pearl, chopping with the grim efficiency of someone who stopped expecting thanks around her second commune. Pearl can dice an onion without crying, a skill she attributes not to technique but to having simply run out of tears for onions. Pearl is 24 and has the hands of a field medic. When the meal is ready, Pearl will not announce it. She will simply set the pot down, and the men will arrive as if summoned, which, in a sense, they are. One part took you a while to see. The work is real labour, skilled and heavy and constant, and it is the actual material foundation of the whole dream. Without the pot, there is no commune, only a brief camping trip that ends in hunger, and yet the pot has no status. The man who can play 3 chords has status. You who keep 20 human beings alive every single night have a wooden spoon and a sore back. The meal lands, the bowl's empty, the praise, when it comes, goes to the abundance of the universe rather than to you. You serve. You eat what is left. You begin, before your own bowl is cool, the long second shift of scrubbing a pot roughly the size of a small boat. Of course, nobody offers to help. Helping would require noticing, and the entire architecture of the evening was built so that the work would not be noticed. You scrub. The freedom discussion drifts into the night, warm and abstract and weightless. The pot in your hands is none of those things. It is heavy, it is concrete, and it is unmistakably yours. You are eating brown rice again, because brown rice is the center of the diet, the planet around which every other food orbits at a respectful distance. Someone has explained to you that if you eat nothing but rice and a little tea for 10 days, your cells will come back into balance with the universe. You are on day 4. Your cells so far have expressed no opinion, but your gums have begun to feel strange, and you are starting to suspect that the universe does not, in fact, require this much fiber. The diet is called macrobiotics, and it arrived from Japan by way of a man named George Osawa, who wrote a book and divided all of food into yin and yang, which sounds elegant until you realize it means dinner is now a moral exam. Some foods are too yin, some are too yang. Rice, blessedly, is balanced, which is convenient, because rice is also what there is. The philosophy and the budget have reached a suspiciously perfect agreement. The brown rice itself is a serious grain. It does not yield. White rice is for people who have given up on enlightenment, and you have not, so you chew. You chew with the dedication of a cow working through a difficult theology. A single bowl can occupy a full evening, which the diet frames as mindfulness and your jaw frames as labour. The tea, which is the only other permitted item and which tastes like a rumour of tea, the memory of a leaf that once passed nearby. You drink it because you are thirsty and because after 4 days it has begun to seem genuinely exciting, the way the smallest variation does to a prisoner. A grain of sea salt is a festival. A sesame seed is Christmas. The people who designed this diet were earnest, and the people who follow it are earnest. And earnestness, you are learning, is not the same thing as nutrition. The strictest version of this regimen has, in fact, given people scurvy, an actual pirate disease, contracted in the supposed health capital of the world by 20-year-olds trying to perfect themselves. There was even a death, somewhere, attributed to a brown rice cleanse, which is the kind of sentence that should appear on a warning label and instead appears in a cookbook. Saffron runs the kitchen tonight, and Saffron believes in the diet with the full force of a convert. She measures the rice with a wooden cup and a steady hand, and she will tell you, if you let her, that her skin has never been clearer while standing under a light that suggests otherwise. Saffron is not lying. She believes it completely. The belief is doing most of the heavy lifting that the vitamins are not. What nobody mentions is this. A diet of almost pure starch makes a person foggy, cold, and slow. And a foggy, cold, slow person is much easier to fold into whatever the household needs from her. You are too tired to argue about the meeting you were left out of. You are too low on iron to mount a revolution of your own. The brown rice is not a conspiracy, but it is accidentally the perfect fuel for a woman the movement would prefer compliant. You finish the bowl. You consider, briefly and with real longing, an orange, a genuine orange, dense with the exact vitamin your gums are quietly requesting. There are no oranges. Oranges, someone decided, are too yin. You make a private note that the universe and your body appear to want different things, and that when they disagree, it is always your body that is asked to apologize. Day 5 begins tomorrow, identical to day 4, which was identical to day 3. The rice waits in its sack like a patient creditor. You will chew your way to balance, or to scurvy, whichever the universe delivers first, and you will do it cross-legged on a cold floor, smiling, because complaining about free food is, of course, deeply uptight. You are someone's old lady now, which happened sometime around your 19th birthday without any ceremony, paperwork, or particular decision on your part. The term means you belong, loosely, to a specific man, and that other men will mostly leave you alone, and that you will cook for him and mind whatever children arrive. It is presented to you as the opposite of marriage, as a free and unbound arrangement. In practice, you have acquired a husband, a household, and a full unpaid job, and lost the ring that at least used to come with the deal. The phrase itself does some quiet work. Old lady, you are 19. The word old has been applied to you the way a brand is applied to cattle, casually and permanently, and it marks you as taken without the inconvenient ceremony of anyone promising you anything. A wife, at least, has a contract she can waive in a courtroom. You have a nickname and a vibe. Your man is named River, which is not the name his mother gave him in Sacramento, and River is, by the standards of the scene, one of the good ones. He does not hit. He shares his stash. He once carried water for an entire afternoon and mentioned it for a week. River believes deeply in equality, in the abstract, the way a man believes in a country he has read about but never visited. Walk through what being an old lady actually involves, hour by hour. You wake first, you make the food, you wash the clothes, you hold the baby. You roll the cigarettes, find the lost things, soothe the bad moods, and remember the names of everyone River has forgotten. You are, functionally, a wife, a mother, a secretary, and a stage manager, compensated in the warm feeling of being needed and the cold reality of having nowhere else to go. The arrangement was supposed to free you both from possession, and yet, somehow, the possession only got renamed. You are still expected to be faithful, attentive, and available, while River, citing the principles of the movement, considers his own freedom to be an ongoing experiment with the new arrivals. The double standard is not even hidden. It is simply called consciousness when he does it and clinging when you object. Dawn lives in the next room and has done this 3 times now, with 3 men and 3 sets of children, each man drifting off when the reality of fatherhood collided with the romance of the road. Dawn does not warn the new girls anymore. She tried, early on, and was told she was bitter, which is the word the scene uses for a woman who has correctly predicted the future. So Dawn just watches, folds laundry, and keeps a small private fund the men do not know about. The trap, stated plainly, is this. Marriage, for all its faults, came with claims. A wife could demand support, fidelity, a roof, because the law and the church stood behind her, grumpily but reliably. You gave all that up for freedom, and the freedom turned out to be mostly his. You have the duties of a wife with none of the standing, like an employee who quit for a startup and discovered too late there were no shares. You love him probably in the muddled way of someone 19 and far from home. That is real, and it is not nothing. But love was supposed to be the whole foundation here, the thing that replaced all the old rotten institutions, and you are starting to notice that love is a wonderful foundation for the person standing on top of it, and a heavy one for the person underneath. Night comes. River expounds. You listen, because listening is also, somehow, your job. And in the small hours you do the arithmetic Dawn taught you without words, counting what you give against what you can claim, arriving each time at the same uncomfortable total, which is that you are married in every way except the ones that would protect you. You are learning that free love has a price list, and that you are the one being charged. The rule, as it has been explained to you many times by men who benefit enormously from it, is that desire should flow without possession or hesitation. The unwritten footnote is that a woman who says no is uptight, hung up, and sadly still trapped in her mother's century. So you navigate each evening as a small negotiation, weighing how much you want to be left alone against how much you want to be considered free. The word free is doing a great deal of work here, most of it quiet, selective, and suspicious. Free, in this context, has come to mean available, and available has come to mean yours, specifically. The man making the argument always seems to arrive at the same conclusion, which is that liberation requires you, personally, tonight. It is remarkable how often the universe's grand design lines up exactly with what a particular man wants at 11 o'clock. Saying no is technically allowed and practically expensive. There is no force, usually, which the men will mention as proof of their virtue. There is only the slow social cost, the cooling, the label, the sense that you have failed a test everyone insists is not a test. You are free to decline the way you are free to leave a job in a town with one employer. The door is open. There is simply nothing on the other side of it. The philosophy matters here, because there is one, and it is sincere, and that is what makes it slippery. Possessiveness is bourgeois. Jealousy is a sickness of the old world. Love, real love, asks nothing and holds nothing. These are not stupid ideas. In the mouths of generous people, they might even be beautiful ones. The trouble is that they are being deployed, almost exclusively, by men against women in the direction of more access for men. A beautiful idea pointed only one way is just a tool wearing a flower. Coral tried to live it fully, in both directions, taking the same freedoms the men took. Coral discovered that the rules quietly changed when she did. A man with many lovers is enlightened. A woman with many lovers is, she learned, talked about, and not kindly, by the same men who preach the gospel of free flow. The freedom, it turned out, had a gender written in invisible ink at the top of the contract, and here is the part the songs leave out entirely. The consequences are not evenly shared, because biology did not sign the manifesto. When availability turns into a missed pill, into a fever, into a clinic visit, it is your body that keeps the appointment. The man drifts on, lighter than he arrived. You carry the arithmetic in a place he will never have to think about. Free love is free the way a sample is free, right up until you read what you agreed to. So you develop strategies, the way women always have. You attach yourself to one man partly as shelter from the others, trading open season for a single landlord. You learn which refusals can be framed as moods and which will be remembered as rejection. You become fluent in the soft no, the tired no, the headache that is sometimes real and sometimes a small act of self-defense dressed up as biology. The saddest part is that some of it was good. Some of those nights were chosen freely and gladly, with people you wanted, and that genuine freedom mattered and is worth defending. The tragedy is how thoroughly it got tangled with obligation, until you could no longer easily tell your own desire from the pressure wearing its clothes. The movement promised to untangle sex from coercion. Mostly it just changed who got to do the coercing and called the change a revolution. You lie awake doing the math again. You are free. You have been told so repeatedly by the people most served by your believing it. You are sitting in the waiting room of the Haight Free Clinic, which opened in June and already sees more people in a day than it was built to see in a week. The young doctor here treats everyone for free, which is the only reason you came, because the thing on your skin has been getting worse and you have exactly no money. Around you are 250 other people with the same problem, which is that liberation did not come with health insurance, and the body keeps sending invoices anyway. The clinic was started by a doctor named David Smith, who lived in the neighborhood, looked at the rising tide of sick young people, and decided that healthcare was a right and not a privilege. He printed that line and put it on the wall. It is a genuinely radical sentence, and it is also, this morning, surrounded by the smell of 200 unwashed bodies, which is the form radical sentences usually take in real life, with a line and a weight. The waiting room is a museum of what freedom does to a body that has stopped being maintained. There is a boy with feet the colour of a bad plum because he gave up shoes and the sidewalk did not forgive him. There is a girl shivering with hepatitis she caught from a shared needle that someone promised was clean. There is a steady, quiet, and downcast traffic of women your age, here for the things that happen to women. Then there is hepatitis, the unofficial mascot of the scene. It travels through shared needles, which travel through the speed that has crept in to replace the gentler drugs, and it turns your eyes the yellow of an old newspaper. The clinic sees it constantly. The summer of love, it turns out, has the bloodwork of a disaster zone, which the magazine photographers somehow never asked anyone to roll up a sleeve for. A nurse named Frances moves down the line with a clipboard and a flat competence that is the most reassuring thing you have felt in weeks. Frances does not lecture. Frances asks what is wrong, writes it down, and tells you where to sit. And in her brisk, ordinary kindness she is doing more practical good before lunch than 100 posters about love. Frances is paid almost nothing. Frances is here every single day. The doctor sees you eventually, looks at the thing on your skin, names it without drama, and gives you something to put on it from a shelf of donated supplies that is always nearly empty. He does not make you feel like a failure. That is, you realize, a kind of medicine all its own. What sits with you, waiting your turn, is this. Everyone in this room left home to escape a sick society, and the sick society is the only reason this room exists, because it trained the doctor, manufactured the medicine, and built the building before anyone thought to make it free. The clinic is a beautiful act of rebellion stitched entirely out of the establishment's own thread. Of course it is. There was no other thread to use. The women keep coming through, all morning, with the quiet ailments and the downcast eyes, and you notice that they apologize more, take up less room, wait longer, and ask for less. The freedom that was supposed to lift everyone has, in the matter of who gets sick and who suffers it silently, reproduced the same old arrangement. Frances notices it too. You can tell by the extra gentleness she saves for the girls. You leave with your small jar of donated ointment and your enormous unpayable debt of gratitude. The line behind you has not gotten shorter. It never does. Behind you, Frances calls the next name, and David Smith's sentence about rights and privileges holds its place on the wall, true and stubborn and surrounded, as truth usually is, by people who simply needed to not be sick anymore. You gave up your shoes a few weeks ago, because shoes are a small daily agreement with the society you are trying to leave, and bare feet are honest. The sidewalks of the city, however, did not get the memo about honesty. They are covered in broken glass, hot tar, and the general residue of a neighbourhood that has more visitors than plumbing. Your soles have toughened, but the cut on your left foot has not closed, and it has begun to take on a colour you would describe, if pressed, as concerning. The theory of the bare foot is genuinely lovely. You are connected to the earth. You feel the ground, the warmth of the pavement, the cool of the grass, the honest texture of the actual world that everyone else hides from inside leather. For about a week, on clean ground, it is even true. Then you meet the city, and the city introduces you to the part of the theory nobody tested, which is that the actual world contains a great deal of glass. Picture what is actually on a sidewalk in the Haight in 1967. Broken bottles, cigarette ends still warm, the output of dogs whose owners believe leashes are fascist, spilled wine, spilled worse, and a fine grit of the city itself that works its way into any opening it can find. Your honest connection to the earth is, increasingly, a connection to its bacteria. Your feet have responded the way feet do, by building armour. The soles go thick, dark and leathery, a callus like a tradesman's, and for a while you are proud of them, these tough peasant feet that prove how far you have come from the suburbs. Then the glass finds the soft skin between your toes, where the armour cannot reach, and the cut opens, and the cut, in this neighbourhood, does not get the clean, dry rest it would need to close. A girl named Willow stopped being able to walk for 3 days last month, her foot swollen tight and shining, and she sat in a corner of the crash pad, with it raised on a rolled blanket, joking about it until the joking got thin. Willow is fine now, mostly, after the clinic and a course of something the establishment invented. But Willow keeps her shoes nearby these days, tucked under her bag, the way a reformed gambler keeps the receipts. The quiet absurdity runs like this. You threw away your shoes to reject a system, and the system is now the only thing keeping your foot attached, in the form of a free clinic, a tube of ointment, and an antibiotic discovered by exactly the kind of scientist you came here to renounce. Rebellion, it turns out, has a footnote, and the footnote is your foot. The earth you wanted to feel so honestly is mostly trying to give you tetanus. There is, of course, a gendered tax even here, because there always is. A man with a limp is a rugged figure, a wounded poet of the road. A woman with an infected foot still has to haul the water, mind the children, and stand at the pot, because the labour does not pause for your wound any more than the debt pauses for your recovery. You work hurt. You learn to put weight on the heel and spare the cut. So you make a private peace, the kind women make all over this neighbourhood. You go barefoot when the ground looks kind, and you slip into sandals when it does not, and you tell yourself this is wisdom rather than surrender. The pure version of the principle was for people who never had to carry a full pot across a glass-strewn floor. You have a body to keep working. You will be connected to the earth a little less, and attached to your foot a little more. The cut is healing now, slowly, under a strip of donated gauze. You watch the colour fade day by day, back towards something ordinary, and you feel, against all your stated principles, an enormous and uncomplicated affection for the shoe. You are awake before the sun because the water does not carry itself and the fire does not light itself, and on the commune these two facts have somehow become your responsibility. The others are still asleep in their bags, dreaming of a world without chores. You walk to the creek or the pump with 2 containers, you carry them back full, and you kneel to coax a flame out of damp wood. By the time anyone else stirs, you will have already done the invisible work that makes the morning look like it simply happened. The water lives a quarter-mile away, downhill, which means it lives a quarter-mile away uphill on the only trip that matters. A full container is heavier than it has any right to be, a dense sloshing weight that finds the exact muscle in your shoulder it intends to ruin. You make the trip twice. You have a system, a particular grip, and a particular pace. The creek at this hour is genuinely beautiful. Mist on the surface, the cold, clean and mineral smell of it, the first grey light coming through the trees. You are not blind to this. There is a real reward in being the only one awake, in owning the dawn while everyone else dreams. For about 90 seconds, kneeling at the water, you understand exactly why anyone wanted this life. Then you pick up the containers, and your shoulder reminds you that beauty and labour are old roommates who have never once split the rent evenly. The fire is its own creature, with moods. Damp wood does not want to burn, and convincing it requires patience, kindling, a careful architecture of small sticks, and a willingness to blow gently into smoke until your eyes stream. You have learned to read the wood, to know which logs will catch, and which are just going to sit there being ornamental. It is a real skill. You earned it on your knees in the cold. No one will ever ask you about it. Juniper taught you the fire 2 winters into her own commune life, with the calm of someone who has stopped waiting for help and started simply being competent. Juniper splits her own kindling with a hatchet she keeps sharp, and she taught you the trick of saving a few dry sticks under cover overnight so the morning is not a battle. Juniper is the most genuinely free person on the land, you sometimes think, and her freedom looks a great deal like a job she happens to be very good at. There is a thing about being the one who does the dawn. The household experiences warmth and water as features of the place, like the view, things that are simply present when they open their eyes. They do not experience them as the output of a specific woman's specific cold morning. The labour disappears into the result. A warm room erases the hauling the way a clean floor erases the scrubbing, which is the oldest trick in the long history of women's work, the trick of being invisible precisely when you have succeeded. The men, when they wake, will speak of self-sufficiency, of living off the land, of having escaped the rat race. And they have, in a sense. They have escaped into a life where the rat race is run before dawn by someone else, so that the racing is finished and hidden by the time they sit up and reach for the warm tea you made. Self-sufficiency, you have noticed, is frequently a description of what the group achieves through what one person does. The fire catches. It always does, eventually, because you do not have the option of it not catching. The water is in from both trips. The first grey light has gone gold at the edges, and the camp begins to stir, into a morning you built with your hands while it slept. You warm your fingers at the flame you coaxed out of wet wood, and you let yourself have it, the small private pride, before the day arrives to spend you. You are holding a baby that may or may not be yours, watching 3 toddlers who definitely are not, while in the next room a meeting is being held about the future of human consciousness. The meeting is important. You know it is important because the men keep saying so, and because none of them have been interrupted by a child in over an hour, which is a freedom you currently cannot imagine. You bounce the baby. You wipe a nose. The revolution is being planned 8 feet away, and you are not in the room. The children on a commune belong, in theory, to everyone, which is a beautiful idea that resolves, in practice, to belonging to the nearest woman. Ownership is communal. Care is specific. The little tribe of toddlers has sorted itself, by some instinct, older than the movement, into the orbit of whoever is least likely to let them eat a bug, and that whoever is, reliably, you, or Pearl, or Dawn, or whichever woman drew the short straw of being responsible by temperament. They are good children, mostly, in the feral way of kids raised by a village that is itself only 19 years old. They have names like Sunshine and Forest and one simply called Bird, and they run barefoot, unbrushed, and largely unsupervised, except by you, right now, which is the supervision. You count them constantly, the way a shepherd counts, because the land has a creek and a road and 100 small ways for a toddler to find disaster. Through the doorway the meeting rolls on. You can hear the shape of it without the content, the rising passion, the long pauses for someone to find the perfect word, the particular tone of men who feel themselves to be at the centre of something historic. They are deciding things, where the money goes, whether to take the new land, what the commune means. Real decisions, with real weight, conducted entirely by people who have never once located the diapers. Consider the strange arithmetic of that doorway. To be in the meeting, you need your hands free. And to have your hands free, someone else must hold the children. And the someone else is always a woman, which means the meeting is, structurally, a room you cannot enter as long as you are doing the thing that makes the meeting possible. The childcare is the price of admission and also the thing that disqualifies you from paying it. It is a perfect little machine for keeping you out. Skye once set the baby down, walked into the meeting and tried to speak, and was heard out with the patient kindness reserved for an interruption. Her point, which was good, was absorbed and forgotten. Within minutes a child was crying, and the crying was, by a glance she will never forget, assigned back to her. Skye returned to the children. The meeting continued. The lesson was delivered without a single unkind word, which is how the most durable lessons usually arrive. The baby in your arms settles, finally, into the boneless, heavy sleep of the very young, and you feel the ordinary enormous love that makes all of this bearable, and most of it possible. This is the trap and the gift at once. You would not hand the baby to anyone. The care is real, and chosen, and yours. And it is precisely that realness, that chosenness, that the structure quietly relies on, because a woman who truly loves the children will never put them down to go argue about the budget. The meeting ends. The men emerge, lit up with the importance of what they have decided, and they move through the room full of sleeping children like guests at their own home, fond and absent. One of them ruffles a toddler's hair on his way to roll a cigarette. The decisions have been made. You will hear about them later as news, the way you hear about the weather, having had exactly as much say in one as the other. You are sewing, because almost everything you wear, you or another woman made by hand. The peasant blouse, the long skirt, the patches holding your jeans together, the macrame bag, the embroidery climbing up a sleeve, all of it represents hours that do not show up in anyone's account of the movement. The look is supposed to read as effortless and free. It is, in fact, a great deal of effort, performed quietly in the evenings, so that the whole household can appear to have been clothed by the spontaneous generosity of the earth. The aesthetic is gorgeous, genuinely. Flowing fabrics, hand-dyed in onion skins and berries, embroidered with flowers and signs and small private jokes, patched in 100 fabrics so that a pair of jeans becomes a quilt with a personal history. Nothing matches, and that is the point, and achieving that careless mismatch is, ironically, painstaking. The needle is the actual engine of the hippie look. Every seam is your wrist. Every patch is 20 minutes you will not get back. The tie-dye that reads as a happy accident was, in reality, a careful afternoon of rubber bands and dye baths and stained fingers. The spontaneity is staged. You are the stage crew. Esther runs the closest thing the commune has to a workshop, which is a corner, a basket of thread, and an authority no one questions because no one else can do what she does. Esther can take a torn army surplus jacket and a scrap of Indian cotton and return it to you as something you would weep to own. Esther's hands are always moving, mending in conversation, hemming during meetings, her fingers doing in the background the work that keeps 40 people from going around in rags. The men, of course, also wear the look, the embroidered shirts and the patched jeans and the careful disorder, and the men did not make any of it. Their clothes appear on them the way the dinner appears on the table, as if the universe simply provides. They will speak movingly about rejecting consumer fashion, about refusing the factory and the label, while wearing a shirt that took a woman an evening to embroider, which is its own kind of factory. With worse pay and better light, nobody says this part out loud. This is real craft, the kind your great-grandmother would have recognized instantly, the skills of the home that industrial society spent a century trying to make women forget. And you have picked them back up, not as quaint hobbies but as necessities, and become genuinely good at them. That is something. In rejecting the modern world, you have accidentally re-inherited a deep and ancient competence, and it lives entirely in the hands of the women. There is even a small economy in it. The bags and the embroidered things sell, at the market, to tourists who want a piece of the dream to carry home, and that money is sometimes the only cash a woman controls outright. Esther sells her mended jackets and keeps the coins in a tin. It is not much, but it is hers, and in a life with very little of that, the tin matters more than its contents. So you sew on, into the evening, by the light of a kerosene lamp, your stitches small, even, and invisible, which is the whole goal of good sewing, and you have begun to notice a fairly exact description of your role in general. The best work here disappears into the result. A perfect seam shows nothing. A well-run house looks effortless. A movement that runs on women's hands gets remembered, in the photographs, as a thing that happened to a lot of men in nice shirts. You tie off the thread. You hold the finished blouse up to the lamp, turning it, checking the line. It is beautiful. You made it. Tomorrow someone will wear it into a photograph, and the photograph will say freedom, and you will know what the photograph does not, which is exactly how many hours freedom takes to hem. You are dabbing patchouli oil on your wrists and neck, and you are doing it for a reason that has very little to do with smelling like a meadow. Running water for bathing is scarce, here in the crash pad and worse on the commune, and a strong oil does the practical work of standing in for a bath you cannot take. The scent has become a kind of uniform. Underneath it, everyone is managing the same quiet problem, which is that a great many people are sharing a very small amount of soap and an even smaller amount of plumbing. Patchouli is a remarkable substance. It is dark, earthy, persistent, and powerful enough to walk into a room a full minute before you do and linger a full hour after you leave. It is, functionally, the air freshener of an entire generation, deployed across the unwashed masses like a fragrant ceasefire. People associate it now with peace and love. It would be more honest to associate it with the heroic ongoing battle against the smell of too many bodies in not enough water. Think about the actual logistics of staying clean when there is no bathroom worth the name. You learn the sponge bath, the strategic wash, the art of getting the essential parts of yourself acceptable with a basin and a cloth and a kettle of water you heated yourself. You wash your hair rarely and brush it endlessly, because brushing is free and shampoo is not. You become an expert in the economics of cleanliness, which is a subject the suburbs never made you study. The scarcity is not shared equally, naturally. A man can be grubby and it reads as authentic, as a noble refusal of vanity, as proof he has transcended such shallow concerns. A woman who is grubby is just dirty, judged by the same eyes that claim to have abandoned judgment. So you do the extra invisible labour of seeming clean, the oil, the brushing, the basin, while the men transcend hygiene and somehow get applauded for it. Marisol keeps the cleanest corner on the whole commune through sheer relentless discipline. A kettle always on, a cloth always rinsed, her one good dress aired daily on a line. Marisol grew up with running water and refuses, quietly and completely, to surrender every standard at once. She is teased for it, gently, called bourgeois behind her back. She heats her water and ignores them, and her corner does not smell, and on a bad week half the teasers come asking to borrow her soap. At the centre of it sits a small absurdity. The movement set out to reconnect with the body, to honour it, to strip away the shame and the artifice that the old world piled onto flesh, and it did, sort of. But honouring the body turned out to require, inconveniently, a lot of water, and water turned out to require pipes and pumps and infrastructure. the very systems everyone fled. The natural body, it turns out, smells, and managing that smell is its own full-time and deeply unnatural project. There is real beauty in the simplicity. On a good day, at a clean creek in summer, bathing in cold running water under open sky is a genuine pleasure the bathroom never offered. And on those days, the whole philosophy feels vindicated and easy. It is the other 300 days, the cold ones, the crowded ones, the ones with no creek and a line for the basin, that the philosophy forgot to plan for, and that you plan for instead, with a little brown bottle of oil. So the patchouli goes on wrist and neck and the ends of your hair, a daily ritual that is half perfume and half engineering. It is honest work, in its way, keeping yourself decent against the odds. You cap the bottle. You step out smelling of the era itself, dark and earthy and persistent, the exact scent that will, 30 years from now, make a whole generation go faint with nostalgia at the door of a head shop. It is laundry day, which on the commune means it is your day, because the laundry of 20 people does not sort itself by gender of origin and yet somehow always arrives in your hands. You haul the water you already hauled once this morning, you heat it, and you work each garment by hand against a board or a rock. The clothes belong to everyone. The labour belongs to you, and the 2 other women bent over the same tubs, wringing out the shirts of men who would be genuinely surprised to learn the shirts required wringing. The scale of it is the thing the suburbs never prepared you for. 20 people generate an astonishing volume of cloth, and every item of it must be scrubbed by hand, in water you carried and heated, with soap you are rationing. There is no machine. The machine was part of what everyone rejected, and the rejection of the machine landed, with great precision, on your shoulders and your knuckles and the small of your back. There is a technique to it, and it is hard won. You learn to work the collar and the cuffs first, where a body leaves the most of itself. You learn that wringing is a 2-handed twist that you will feel by evening. You learn which stains surrender to cold and which demand hot, which is its own small chemistry, performed without a label or an instruction, passed woman to woman like a folk song. Ruth, who is past 40 and has done more laundry than anyone should outlive, works beside you with a steady rhythm that never seems to tire. Ruth wrings a heavy work shirt in 2 efficient motions and hangs it without looking, her hands knowing the work so completely they have stopped consulting her about it. Ruth does not complain. Ruth long ago decided that complaint was a current that flowed downhill into nothing, and chose instead to simply be unbeatably good at the thing she could not escape. The clothes themselves tell you everything about the household. Here is the embroidered shirt a man wears to seem gentle. Here are the children's things, small and endlessly soiled. Here is a man's pair of jeans so far gone that washing them feels less like cleaning and more like negotiating. This is the part that turns the screw. The men experience clean clothes the way they experience the warm room and the full pot, as weather, as a feature of reality that simply obtains. A shirt is dirty, then later it is clean, and the transformation in between is invisible to them. A small private miracle they have never once been asked to perform. They have, most of them, literally never washed their own clothing, and they call this a liberated life. There is, strangely, a kind of fellowship at the tubs. The women work together, and the work, being mindless, rhythmic, and endless, leaves the mouth free. And so the laundry becomes the one reliable meeting that women on the commune actually get to hold. You talk. You say things at the tubs you would never say at the table, and the men, who would never dream of joining you here, have accidentally handed you the only unsupervised room you have. The drudgery is also, quietly, a conspiracy. The line fills up across the afternoon, shirt by shirt, until the whole household hangs there dripping in the sun, 20 lives flapping gently on a rope you strung. It is genuinely satisfying. The full line, the clean smell, the order pulled out of a heap. You will take the satisfaction, because it is earned and because no one is offering you any other kind. You earned every inch of that rope. You will haul it all down again, dry and warm, before the men have noticed it was ever wet. Ruth wrings the last cloth, hangs it, straightens her back with a sound, and gives you a look that contains an entire unspoken education. Then the 2 of you tip the grey water out together, and that, for today, is the whole of the revolution. You need actual money today, the folding kind, because some things still cost it no matter how free the world is supposed to be. So you go out and you spare change, which is the gentle word for asking strangers for coins. You sit, you smile, you say the line, and you watch tourists decide whether you are a vision of freedom or a cautionary tale. It is, in its way, a job. It has hours, a territory, and competition. It simply does not have a wage, a boss you can complain to, or any prospect of a raise. The world is supposed to be free, and large parts of it genuinely are. The stew, the clinic, the floor to sleep on. But the bus costs money. The laundry soap costs money. The thing the baby needs costs money, and the universe, for all its abundance, has never once produced a working bus token out of pure good vibes. So someone has to generate cash, and generating cash with no job, no address, and no resume comes down to the open hand. Panhandling has a craft to it. You learn the corners where the tourists are kind and the corners where the police are bored. You learn the face to make, open, gentle, and never desperate, because desperation frightens people and frightened people keep walking. You learn the line, a soft request with a blessing attached, because a stranger will pay surprisingly well to feel like they have participated in something beautiful rather than simply been asked for a quarter. Robin is the best you have ever seen at it, and Robin will tell you flatly that the trick is to make the giver feel good, not to make yourself feel small. Robin sits with a straight back and a real smile and treats each coin as a small fair exchange, blessing for cash, and she clears more in an afternoon than men who slump and mutter clear in a day. Robin is, by any honest measure, a working professional. She would simply never be allowed to call it that. The gendered math runs through this too, of course. A young woman with a soft face and a baby on her lap collects more than a grizzled man, which sounds like an advantage until you notice what it actually is, which is the world paying a premium for your visible vulnerability. You are, in effect, monetizing being a woman alone, and the better you are at seeming gentle and harmless, the more it pays, which is a deeply unpleasant thing to be good at. The romance leaves this part out. Spare changing is exhausting in a way that has nothing to do with the body. It is the slow erosion of being looked at and judged all day, of holding a smile while a man in a nice coat decides out loud whether you deserve to eat. You go home with a pocket of coins and a thin film of having been a spectacle, and you wash the second thing off harder than the first. There is, somewhere in it, a strange freedom, and you will not pretend otherwise. No clock, no supervisor, no factory swallowing your daylight. On a warm day, on a good corner, with the city flowing past, there are worse ways to spend an afternoon than sitting in the sun being occasionally blessed by strangers. The trouble is that the freedom is real and the security is zero, and you cannot pay a doctor in afternoons that felt nice. You count the take at dusk, coin by coin, on the floor of the crash pad. It comes to enough for the bus and the soap and a little of what the baby needs, which is to say it comes to exactly today, with nothing left over for tomorrow. Tomorrow you will go out and do it again, the open hand, the soft line, the straight back Robin taught you. The world is free. You just have to keep buying your small corner of it, one stranger's good feeling at a time. You are sitting in a county welfare office, which is possibly the least groovy room in America, filling out a form so that your child can eat this month. The irony is not lost on you, and it would not be lost on the men back at the house, who rail against the government nightly and have never once stood in this line. The clerk asks for an address. You invent something plausible. The despised system is about to hand you the food stamps that will quietly keep the revolution's children fed, and nobody back home will ever thank it. The office is everything you came to the movement to escape. In one fluorescent room, there are forms, there are lines. There is a clerk with a stamp and a tired suspicion, and a clock on the wall that actually means something, and a set of rules that do not care in the slightest about your beautiful ideas. You sit in it anyway because your child is hungry, and hunger does not accept payment in philosophy. Consider the strange double life this requires. At the commune, you are a free spirit who has rejected money, property, and the state. Here, you are an applicant, with a case number and a category, performing enough conventional respectability to satisfy a stranger with a clipboard. You code switch at the county line, trading your beads for your best plain blouse, becoming briefly legible to the system so it will release what your family needs. Carol taught you how to do this, because Carol has 3 children and 0 patience for letting them go without to protect a man's ideology. Carol knows which answers to give, which boxes to leave vague, how to look settled enough to qualify without looking prosperous enough to disqualify. Carol calls it working the man for the kids, and she does it with the brisk competence of a woman who long ago sorted her priorities and put the children firmly on top. The men cannot do this and would not, and that is precisely why it falls to you. To stand in this line, you must admit the state exists, that it has something you need, that your freedom has a hole in it shaped exactly like a hungry child. The men's principles depend on never making that admission, so they keep the principles clean and intact, and you make the trip, and the food stamps you carry home feed the very mouths that will later denounce the hand that filled them. Underneath the whole arrangement is a quiet truth. The commune is not actually self-sufficient, and never was. It floats, in part, on a thin, steady stream of welfare, food stamps, and the occasional check from a worried parent back home, a stream administered almost entirely by women willing to swallow their pride at a county desk. The dream of independence is real on the surface and subsidized underneath, and you are the subsidy, standing in line, lying gently about your address. There is no shame in it, you have decided, though the deciding took effort. Feeding a child is the oldest and least negotiable work there is. Older than any movement, more real than any slogan. If the price of it is an afternoon in a fluorescent room being mildly humiliated by a clerk, you will pay that price every single month and consider it a bargain. The men can keep the purity, you will keep the children alive. The clerk stamps the form finally and slides it back, and the small bureaucratic miracle is complete, food secured for another stretch of weeks. You gather your things, you thank her, you mean it, and you walk back out toward the world that taught you to despise this room. The stamps are in your bag. The children will eat. And tonight, when a man explains over dinner that the government is a prison, you will pass him the food his prison paid for, and you will say nothing at all. You take a small pill every morning, and that pill is doing more to change your life than any manifesto tacked to the wall. It is newly legal, recently celebrated as the great equalizer, and it has handed you something your grandmother never had, which is a say in whether this year includes a baby. What it does not hand you is a full account of what it is doing to your body, the headaches, the clots nobody mentioned, the long list printed in type too small to find. You swallow it anyway, because the alternative is a different and larger risk entirely. The pill is genuinely revolutionary, and not in the way the men use the word. For the entire span of human history before about 1960, a woman who wanted a man also had to be ready, every single time, for a baby she might not survive. The pill cut that ancient cord, it is, no exaggeration, one of the most liberating objects ever handed to women, and it arrived in a little circular case that fits in a palm. Who actually benefits is more complicated than the slogan. The pill freed you, yes. It also, conveniently, freed every man around you from the last practical consequence that used to make him cautious. Once pregnancy became your problem to prevent, it quietly became your fault when it happened, and the men, relieved of the old fear, pressed their advantage with the clear conscience of people who have been told the danger is handled. The early formulations are crude, heavy, and untested. The dose is far higher than it needs to be, because no one has tuned it yet, and the side effects arrive accordingly. The nausea, the headaches, the moods, and the rare clot that the cheerful coverage tends to leave out. You compare notes with other women, because no doctor sat you down and explained it, and the real instruction manual for this drug is passed hand to hand among women who have learned the hard way what the pamphlet skipped. You know Greta, who keeps the whole commune's supply organised in an old tobacco tin, because getting the pill out here, miles from a city, is its own logistical campaign. Greta knows which clinic will prescribe without a husband's signature, which is not all of them, and which pharmacist will not lecture. Greta runs a small, quiet underground railroad of reproductive control, conducted in whispers and favours, and she is, by any sane measure, doing more for the women here than the entire revolution combined. One thing sharpens it all. Abortion is illegal, almost everywhere, which means the pill is not one option among many, but the thin line between a life you choose and a life that simply happens to you. Behind that line is a country of back rooms and terrible risks that every woman here knows about and no one discusses at dinner. The little pill in your palm is standing between you and that country, every single morning, which is a great deal to ask of something so small. The men, naturally, treat the whole apparatus as invisible, the way they treat the laundry and the stew. They benefit from it enormously, and think about it never. To them, the absence of babies is just the natural state of a free arrangement, rather than the daily engineered outcome of a woman remembering a pill, finding a clinic, and managing side effects no one warned her about. The freedom they enjoy so casually is underneath your unending administrative project. You feel, holding it, the strange double weight of the thing, gratitude and grievance at once. It gave you a power women have begged for since the beginning of time. It also handed the men a loophole and called it progress. You swallow it dry, snap the little case shut, and slide it back behind the loose board, the one good hiding place in a house that officially believes in no secrets. You are pregnant, and the freedom that was promised to you turns out to have a very specific shape, which is the shape of a woman alone with a coming child and no money of her own. The father may stay or may drift on to the next town and the next old lady. There is no marriage to fall back on, because marriage was the thing you were all so proud to have escaped. So you do the arithmetic that no one in the movement put in a song, counting the months and the dollars and the people you can actually rely on. The news itself lands differently here than it would have in your mother's world. There, a pregnancy outside marriage was a scandal, a shame, a thing whispered about and hidden away. Here it is greeted as beautiful, natural, a gift of the universe, which is genuinely kinder and also, you are noticing, suspiciously convenient for everyone who will not be doing any of the actual work. Think about what changes for you, specifically, and what changes for him. For you, everything. Your body, your freedom of movement, your standing in the group, your future, all of it reorganizes around the coming child whether you are ready or not. For him, the change is optional. He can lean in, or he can discover an urgent spiritual calling in another state, and the culture will forgive him completely, because commitment is bourgeois and the road is calling and a man cannot be caged. The father in your case is named Phoenix, and Phoenix is, at this exact moment, very moved. He talks about the child as a beautiful continuation of the cosmic something, and he means it, tonight. The question that keeps you awake is not whether Phoenix means it now. It is whether Phoenix will mean it in February, in the small hours when the beautiful cosmic continuation is screaming, and the romance has worn down to the bone of plain hard work. Linda is your evidence, and Linda's evidence is not encouraging. Linda has 2 children by 2 men who both meant it, sincerely, at the time, and who are both now elsewhere, meaning it about someone else. Linda does not warn you with words anymore, only with her tired, competent presence, a living demonstration of where this road tends to lead. Linda manages, Linda always manages. That is exactly the problem, because the men have learned they can leave precisely because the women always manage. The trap has no clean exit. You escaped the old system, the one that would have forced a shotgun marriage and a lifetime of resentment, and good riddance to it. But the old system, for all its cruelty, did hold the man to account, clumsily, through shame and law and the heavy hand of his own family. The new freedom removed the cage from the man and left the consequences sitting squarely with you. You traded a bad deal for a different bad deal, and nobody mentioned that part on the way in. The practical questions arrive in a cold, orderly line. Where will you give birth? Who will help? How will you eat when you cannot work the garden or stand at the pot? What happens if Phoenix follows his calling east? And yet, underneath the fear, there is the other thing, the unkillable animal gladness of it, the small, fierce and private joy that has nothing to do with Phoenix or the movement or the arithmetic. This child is coming, and some deep part of you is delighted, and that delight is entirely yours. You hold both at once, the joy and the cold math, the way you will soon hold a baby on one hip and a list of everything you cannot afford in the other hand. You place a hand low on your belly in the dark. Phoenix sleeps beside you, dreaming, possibly, of the road. You stay awake, counting, planning, deciding, doing the quiet, enormous work of getting ready to do this, whether or not anyone stays to help. You are going into labour on a commune that is a long, slow dirt road away from the nearest hospital, and the plan, such as it is to do this the way the body was made to do it. A woman with no formal training but a great deal of nerve is going to catch the baby. You have been told, repeatedly and with conviction, that birth is natural and your body knows what to do. This is even mostly true. It is the small, uncovered percentage, the part with no doctor and no fast way out, that you are about to meet personally. The rejection of the hospital is not crazy, which is the thing people forget. The hospitals of this era treat birth like a surgical emergency, knocking women out cold, strapping their wrists to a table, and whisking the baby away before the mother surfaces. Women came out of those rooms having missed the entire event, groggy and stitched and strangely robbed. So the impulse to do it differently, awake, at home, in your own hands, is a genuine correction of a real cruelty. The woman catching your baby is the heart of this. Her name is Ina, though women like her are appearing on communes all over the country, learning the oldest skill there is by doing it, mile by mile and birth by birth. She has read everything she could find, watched every birth she could attend, and developed an unhurried, steady confidence that does, genuinely, calm the room. She is not a fraud. The labour itself is exactly as enormous as labour has always been. There is no twilight sleep here, no merciful chemical fog. You feel all of it, every wave, fully present in your own body in a way the hospital would have denied you. You are awake for your own life. That turns out to be a much bigger ask than the brochure suggested. Ina moves around you with calm hands and quiet instructions, and the other women hold the space, wiping your face, holding your hand, breathing with you. There is real power in the room, the deep, ancient power of women attending a birth together, a thing your grandmother would have recognized and your hospital-born mother never saw. For long stretches it is even beautiful. Underneath the beauty, patient and quiet, lives this. If something goes wrong, truly wrong, the kind of wrong that births sometimes go without warning or fairness, the dirt road is still there, long and slow between you and the surgeons who could fix it. Ina knows this better than anyone. She carries it in her steady face, the knowledge that her confidence has a hard edge somewhere in the dark, a percentage she cannot talk down, and she does this work anyway because the alternative cruelty was real too. For you, tonight, it goes well. The baby comes, slick, furious, and alive, and is placed on your chest, still tied to you, and the room dissolves into the particular weeping joy that has greeted babies since the first one. You did it awake. You did it in your own hands, surrounded by women, exactly as you hoped, and the rightness of it floods through you, earned and total and beyond any argument. And still, holding your warm new daughter, you understand both halves of the bargain at once. The hospital would have stolen the experience and guaranteed the safety. The commune gave you the experience and gambled the safety, and tonight the gamble paid, and you are dizzy with gratitude that it did. You will not pretend the gamble was nothing. Some night, on some commune, down some other long dirt road, it does not pay, and everyone here knows it, and they light the candle anyway. Ina cleans up quietly, says little, and slips out into the dark to sleep, having added one more birth to the count she is keeping with her own 2 hands. You hold the baby. The road outside stays long and slow and dark, and tonight, for once, it did not matter at all. You are canning, because the garden gave more than the household can eat now, and far less than it will want in February, and the gap between those 2 facts is bridged by you and a great deal of boiling water. Jars line up on the counter, tomatoes and beans sealed under metal lids that ping when they take. The men admire the full shelves later and call it abundance. You know it as a particular Tuesday spent over a hot pot in August, scalding your fingers so that the commune can pretend, come winter, that food simply keeps. Canning is real chemistry, performed with stakes. Get it wrong, and the jar that looks fine on the shelf is quietly breeding the thing that can kill a whole table. So you do it right, every time, with a discipline the rest of the commune's loose philosophy never demanded, because botulism does not care about your intentions. The kitchen is the one place where good vibes are not enough, and you have become, by necessity, its most rigorous scientist. Then there is the heat. August in a kitchen with a pot boiling all day is its own special punishment. The air thick, heavy, and close. The sweat running, the jars too hot to touch and handled anyway. You move tomatoes from boil to bath to jar in a rhythm that never quite lets you rest. Your hands red and steamed, your back a single long complaint. The abundance everyone will praise is being manufactured in a sweatbox by a woman nobody is watching. Hazel is the queen of this. With 20 years on you and a memory full of her own grandmother's methods, and Hazel can tell by the sound of the lid whether the seal will hold. Hazel does not waste emotion. She taught you to read the jars, to listen for the ping, to spot the one that did not take before it spoils a meal in January. Hazel treats the pantry like a bank, every jar a deposit against a hungry future, and she is the richest woman on the commune by the only currency that will matter in 3 months. The work connects you to something old and deep, and you feel it, even through the exhaustion. Every woman in your line, back and back and back, put food by for winter exactly like this, against exactly this fear, with exactly these motions. You are not playing at the past, you are doing the actual ancient labour that kept your whole species alive through every cold season there ever was. It is heavy, and it is sacred, and it is, of course, entirely uncredited. What the full shelf hides is this. Come February, when the garden is dead and the road is mud and the stew would be water without it, those jars are the only thing standing between the household and real hunger. The men who praise the abundance in autumn will eat it all winter without once connecting the warm, full bowl to the August Tuesday that made it. Abundance, to them, is a season. To you it is a project, with your name nowhere on it. There is satisfaction in it though, and you take it gladly, because it is the cleanest satisfaction available to you. The shelf fills, row by row, jewel-coloured in the light, tomatoes and beans and the fruit you put up sweet. It is beautiful, the full pantry, in the deep way that security is always beautiful to someone who has known its absence. You made that. It will feed 40 people through the dark months. No slogan ever did as much. Hazel straightens beside you and surveys the day's rows, and for once she does not reach for the next chore. The two of you just stand there, hands raw, looking at a wall of jars glowing red and gold in the late light, the way other people stand in front of paintings. It is the best thing either of you has made all year. You both know it, and neither of you says so, and that silence is its own kind of bragging. Winter has arrived, and the shack you helped build in the optimism of summer is now revealing, gap by gap, everything you did not know about carpentry. Cold air finds the seams, the mud outside has frozen into ruts, and the single stove demands a constant feeding of wood that someone has to split, carry, and tend, and that someone is frequently you. The romance of open land is still here somewhere, but it's put on 3 sweaters and stopped talking. Survival has quietly become the entire content of the day, dressed up as a lifestyle choice. The shack was built in July by people who had read about building shacks. It went up fast, in a haze of good feeling and borrowed tools, and in the long warm evenings it seemed like proof that you could make a home out of nothing but will and salvaged lumber. Then the temperature dropped, and the shack began its honest winter confession, admitting through every crack exactly which corners were cut by builders who were dreaming instead of measuring. The stove is now the most important object in your life. It is a small iron god, and it demands sacrifice, which is to say wood, constantly, more than you ever imagined a fire could eat. The wood must be split and stacked and kept dry and fed in at intervals that do not pause for sleep, and the keeping of the fire has become a job that lands, like the others, on whoever notices the cold first, which is reliably a woman with a baby to keep warm. The cold reorganizes everything. Tasks that were easy in summer become campaigns. Water freezes and must be thawed. Hands stop working in the early dark. The baby must be kept warm at all costs, which means layered against your own body through the night, which means you do not really sleep, which means you face each short, brutal day already emptied out. The men feel the cold too, of course. They just feel it less, because the warm spot near the stove has, by the same old gravity, become theirs. Faye saw this winter coming and prepared for it all autumn, and Faye is the reason anyone on this end of the land will make it to spring. Faye stuffed the worst gaps with rags and moss, banked the north wall with earth, and hoarded dry wood under cover while the men were still admiring the leaves. Faye is not admired for this. Foresight is invisible labour, and a disaster prevented looks exactly like a disaster that was never going to happen, which is the cruelest math there is. The summer dreamers never priced this in. Cold is not an inconvenience. Cold is an ancient enemy of human beings, patient and impersonal, and it has killed more people than every war combined, and it does not accept payment in ideals. The Back to the Land dream was written in summer by people picturing gardens and sunsets, and it forgot to budget for the season that actually tests whether a shelter is a shelter or just a nice idea with a roof. You survive it though, day by short day, by working harder than the philosophy ever admitted the philosophy would require. You feed the stove, you thaw the water, you wrap the baby. You learn, the way the women before you learned, that warmth in winter is not a feeling but a labour, an endless small heroism performed in the dark by whoever loves the household enough to stay cold so it can be warm. Faye checks the fire one last time before the camp sleeps, banking it to hold through the night, and gives you a tired nod across the orange light. Outside, The frozen ruts shine under a hard, clear moon, beautiful and indifferent. Inside, the stove ticks, the baby breathes, and you lie awake in the cold edge of the warmth you built, listening for the moment the fire will need you again, which it will, soon, the way everything here always does. Someone has to deal with the sanitation, and on a commune of 40 people with one dubious outhouse and no county hookup, that someone is assigned by a logic that always seems to land on the women. The work is exactly as grim as you would expect, and it does not pause for ideals. Disease in close quarters is a real and patient enemy, and the only thing standing between the household and an outbreak is the unglamorous, unthanked routine of keeping the worst of it contained. There is no song about this part. You handle it anyway because the alternative is everyone getting sick. The outhouse was dug in a hurry by people who did not enjoy digging it, and its placement reveals everything about how little thought went in. It is too close to the water in wet weather and too far from the cabins in cold, which is the worst of both worlds achieved through pure inattention. 40 people use it. 40 people, you have noticed, also assume someone else is maintaining it, and that someone else has a name, and the name is yours or one very like it. Understand why this is not a small thing. Human beings packed together without sanitation is a reliable recipe for catastrophe, the thing that emptied cities and ended settlements long before anyone invented the word commune. Cholera does not care that you have rejected materialism. Dysentery is unmoved by your spiritual progress. The line between a functioning household and a sick one is drawn, in mud, by whoever is willing to do the work that no one will ever thank them for. Bea appointed herself the keeper of this grim frontier, not because she wanted to, but because she did the math faster than anyone else. Bea organized the lime, the rota, the digging of the new pit before the old one failed, with the cold competence of a quartermaster who has seen what happens to an army that skips this. Bea is mocked, lightly, as uptight, as too concerned with rules, by people whose continued health is entirely her doing. She keeps the rota anyway. Bea has buried that particular vanity. The gendered shape of it is almost too perfect to bear. The men theorize about purity, about natural living, about returning to the earth, and the actual earthy reality of 40 human bodies gets quietly handed to the women to manage. Purity is a philosophy for them and a chore for you. They commune with nature in the abstract. You commune with it directly, with a shovel and a sack of lime, in the cold, on a schedule. There is a quiet dignity in it, though, that took you a while to find. This work, more than any meeting or any song, is what actually keeps the dream alive, because a single bad outbreak could empty this land faster than any sheriff. You are not the support staff of the revolution. You are its public health department, its sole, unfunded, and thankless defense against the thing that has killed more idealistic communities than failure of nerve ever did. The shovel is not beneath the dream. The shovel is holding it up. So you keep the rota with B, you turn the lime, you sight the new pit upwind and uphill, and you do the math that keeps 40 people out of the clinic. It is the least romantic, least seen, least thanked labour imaginable. And it is also, measured honestly, among the most important, and the gap between those two facts is the exact gap you have come to understand this whole life by. The vital and the invisible are, here, almost always the same thing. Nobody will ever raise a glass to the outhouse. No photograph will be taken of the lime. The work will succeed exactly to the degree that no one ever has to think about it, which means your highest achievement here is to be completely forgotten. You wash your hands hard at the cold tap twice, and you go back to the warm room carrying a competence the whole household depends on and will never once name. The room is high, and you are, for the moment, not, which makes you the closest thing the household has to a responsible adult tonight. This is a particular role that tends to fall to women, the one who stays clear enough to find the door, mind the candle, and notice when a stranger's interest has curdled into something to be managed. Intoxication in a crowded crash pad full of people you have never met is not the same experience for you as it is for the men sprawled around you. You keep one foot on the ground because someone has to. The drugs are everywhere and mostly free, passed around with the open generosity that is one of the genuinely lovely things about this world. And you partake, sometimes gladly, on nights that feel safe. But you have learned to read a room first, the way a sailor reads weather, because a room can turn, and a woman who has misjudged a turning room and gone under in it is in a kind of danger the men around her simply are not. The candle sounds like a small thing and is not. A room full of people who have lost track of their bodies, in an old building, with open flames and no working sense of consequence, is exactly how crash pads burn down, and they do burn down. So you watch the candle. You move the one near the curtain. You are, while everyone else dissolves into the cosmos, quietly running fire safety for a building full of people who would be astonished to learn it needed running. Star is your partner in this. By unspoken agreement, the two of you trading off who stays clear on which nights. Star can spot the exact moment a friendly gathering tips towards something with a bad edge, a stranger who has had too much, a mood gone wrong, and she diffuses it with a calm word and a redirection before most people notice anything happened. Star is not a buzzkill, whatever the men mutter. Star is the reason their fun has a flaw under it. The danger is not evenly distributed, and you both know it without saying it. A man who passes out among strangers wakes up with a headache and a story. A woman who passes out among strangers is rolling dice she did not choose to pick up, in a culture that has decided, conveniently, that being careful is the same as being uptight. So the vigilance falls to the ones with the most to lose, which is the oldest arrangement there is. This is the part that wears on you. You came here, partly, to be free, to let go, to stop managing everything the way women are always made to manage everything. And for a while, on the good nights, you do. But the role keeps finding you, because someone has to hold the thread while the others fly, and the someone is always the one who cannot quite afford to let go, which turns out, again and again, to be a woman. Even here, even in the room built to abolish exactly this. So you sit near the door, clear, sober, and watchful, half in the warmth and half on guard, loving these people and watching over them at the same time, which is a thing women have done in every room in every century. The music is good. The talk is beautiful. A boy in the corner has discovered the meaning of everything and is weeping with joy about it. And you make sure, quietly, that he does not wander into the street while he does. The night winds down, the room softens into sleep, and nothing bad happened, which is the whole point and the reason no one will think of it as an accomplishment. You blow out the last candle yourself. You check the door. You lie down last, as always, the keeper of a safety the room never knew it had, and you let yourself, finally, drift, one ear still open out of a habit this life has only deepened. Somebody has taken something that is not agreeing with them, and they have begun to come apart at the edges in the corner, and you have been silently elected to handle it. This happens often enough that you have developed a method. You lower your voice, you make yourself a calm, fixed point, and you sit with the frightened person until the worst of it passes, sometimes for hours. The acid going around lately has been producing more of these nights than it used to. There is no clinic on call out here. There is just you, the dark, and a job no one named. The person in the corner is a boy of about 20 named Wolf, and Wolf is, right now, certain that he is dying, or melting, or that the walls have begun to take a personal interest in him. None of it is true, and all of it is, to Wolf, the most real thing that has ever happened. You cannot argue him out of it. You learn that early. You can only become the one solid thing in his dissolving world and hold steady until the chemistry lets him go. You built the method yourself, out of failures. You keep your voice low and even, the tone you would use for a spooked animal or a child waking from a nightmare. You say you are here, that this will pass, that the feeling is the drug and not the world, repeated gently, endlessly, a small steady lighthouse of a sentence in a storm only he can see. This is real skill, the kind no one will ever certify. You have learned to recognize the difference between a frightening trip and a genuine medical emergency, the second of which means someone has to get to a phone and a car, fast, down that long dark road. You have learned how to keep a panicking person from bolting into the night. You are, functionally, a crisis nurse with no training, no pay, no shift that ends, and no one who thinks to bring you a cup of tea while you work. The drugs got darker as the years turned, and you felt it firsthand. The early acid, in the early days, mostly opened people up, gently. The stuff going around now is stronger, stranger, and meaner, cut with who knows what, and it breaks people more often and more badly, and some of the ones it breaks do not entirely come back. You have seen a few of those, the ones who left on a trip and never fully returned, drifting through the scene afterward with the lights somehow lowered. It is the part of the dream no poster admits. Pilar is the best in the house at this, calm as deep water, and Pilar taught you most of what you know by letting you watch her work. Pilar says the trick is to not be afraid yourself, or at least to never let them see it, because your fear is contagious and your calm is medicine. The weight of it is the part that stays with you after. To do this, you have to stay outside the experience everyone else is inside, sober and watchful while they fly, holding the rope so the kite does not vanish. It is care work, pure and ancient. The same work women have always done at sickbeds and deathbeds and cradles, simply relocated to a candlelit room full of people who think they have invented a new way to live. The room is new, the job is older than all of it. Wolf comes back, eventually, around dawn, wrung out, shaky, and embarrassingly grateful, clutching your hand and calling you an angel. You are not an angel. You are tired, and your legs are asleep, and you have been doing unpaid emergency medicine since the moon was high. You help him drink some water. You make sure he sleeps. Then you finally close your own eyes, the keeper of one more night that could have gone another way, and did not, because you stayed. You are on your knees in the garden again, because the food the commune is so proud of growing does not grow itself, and weeding is the kind of endless patient labour that gets quietly sorted to you. The vision was self-sufficiency, hands in the soil, freedom from the supermarket. The daily fact is a half-acre of vegetables that demands tending whether or not you feel spiritually fulfilled that morning. The sun is on your neck, the rows go on. Somewhere a man is writing a poem about the land, and you are the one actually touching it. The garden was everyone's idea, in spring, when ideas are cheap and the soil is soft and turning it feels like poetry. The whole commune came out for the planting, a beautiful day of shared labour, and passed jugs and grand talk about feeding yourselves free of the system. Then the seedlings came up, and the weeds came up faster, and the crowd that planted somehow thinned to the 2 or 3 women who understood that a garden is not an event but a sentence served daily for the whole season. Weeds are nature's answer to optimism. They do not rest. They do not respect your back, your other chores, or your need for a single day off, and they will, given 1 week of inattention, swallow everything the household is counting on to survive. So you are out here, every day, in the heat, pulling the same green invaders out of the same dark rows, in a war that has no final victory, only the holding of a line you cannot ever stop holding. Mabel is the actual farmer among you, whatever the men say at meetings, and Mabel knows things the poets do not. Mabel knows when to plant by the feel of the soil, how deep the carrots want to go, which corner floods and which bakes, the whole hard-won literacy of a particular piece of ground. Mabel could keep this commune fed through her knowledge alone. At the meetings where the future is decided, Mabel is usually still in the field, which is precisely why she is not consulted about it. The contrast sharpens something for you, kneeling there. The men love the land in the way you love an idea, passionately and from a comfortable distance. They will speak of the earth, of growing your own, of honest toil, in long, beautiful sentences, while the honest toil itself happens 8 feet away in the form of a woman with dirt to the elbow and a permanent ache in her knees. Loving the land and working the land turn out to be 2 completely different relationships, and only one of them feeds anybody. What the soil gives back, though, is not nothing. There is a deep, plain satisfaction in it that the meetings never offer. The carrots that come up because you tended them, the tomatoes heavy on the vine because you kept the weeds off, the direct, uncomplicated line between your labour and a thing that is real and edible and true. The garden does not flatter you and it does not lie to you. You put in the work, it gives you the food, and that honest exchange is rarer in this life than you ever expected. So you keep the rows, day after day, your hands learning the ground the way Mabel's did, your knowledge growing quietly alongside the crops. You are becoming a real farmer, an actual one, with skills that would feed a family anywhere on earth, and you are becoming it on your knees, unconsulted, while better rested people compose odes to what you are doing. The sun drops toward the trees and the heat finally breaks, and you sit back on your heels and look down the rows you cleared, dark, ordered, and breathing in the cooling light. It is beautiful, the work of your own hands, and it will feed 40 people. You stand, slowly, your knees announcing every hour you spent, and you carry the day's pulled weeds away. There is a goat, and the goat must be milked, and you have noticed that this duty has a way of arriving at your hands no matter how many other people technically live here. The commune dreamed of raising its own animals and making its own cheese, and that dream, it turns out, is mostly a series of very early mornings spent with a creature who has strong opinions and sharp feet. You learn to do it well, because the alternative is no milk. The skill is real and hard-won. The recognition for it, like most of your recognition, is theoretical. The goat is named Persephone, and Persephone is not a metaphor. She is a goat, with a goat's complete indifference to your philosophy of liberation. She must be milked twice a day, on her schedule, which is dawn and dusk regardless of weather or mood. An animal does not negotiate. Persephone needs what she needs when she needs it, and she has taught you, more bluntly than any human ever did, the meaning of a responsibility you cannot put off. There is a great deal of actual skill in it. Milking is not pulling. It is a precise rolling squeeze that you got wrong, painfully for both of you, for 2 solid weeks before your hands learnt it. You have to gentle her first, settle her, win a daily cooperation that cannot be commanded. You have learned her moods, the foot she lifts when she is about to kick. This is animal husbandry, the genuine ancient article, lodged now in your fingers. Opal keeps the whole small menagerie, the goats and the chickens and the one disreputable pig, and Opal moves among them with an easy authority the men at the meetings would kill to project. The animals trust Opal because Opal is reliable, present, and unsentimental, which are not the commune's favourite words but are exactly what a barn requires. Opal taught you to milk, to set a hen, to tell a sick animal from a sulking one. Opal is running a functioning farm. The commune calls it her little hobby. The milk becomes cheese, eventually, through another whole craft you have had to learn, and the cheese is genuinely good. The men present it to visitors as proof of the dream made real, our own cheese, from our own land, as if it materialized from the collective spirit. It materialized from Persephone, twice a day, into your cold hands, and then through your labor into the wheel on the board. The spirit had very little to do with it. The animals taught you a lesson the people never could. The commune runs on a soft economy of intention, where a thing is half done if the feeling behind it was good. The barn does not run on intention. The goat does not care that you meant to come. Either you milk her or she suffers and the milk stops, and that hard, clean accountability has become, strangely, a relief, the one corner of this life that tells you the plain truth. So you go to Persephone at dawn and dusk, every day, dependable as the sun she keeps time by, and you do the real work with your real and growing skill, and you take your quiet pride in the full pail even though no one else will. You are becoming a person who can keep animals alive, who can turn milk into food, who can be counted on by a creature that has no other word for trust. That is a serious thing to become. The world is going to need it long after the dream is gone. Persephone finishes, shifts her weight, and gives you the flat yellow stare that is as close as she comes to thanks, which is closer than most. You carry the warm pail back through the grey light, and she watches you go with the unbothered satisfaction of a creature who knows perfectly well who trained whom, and who will expect you again at dusk, on time, with no excuses she is willing to hear. A decision is being made about the household, the land, the money, or where everyone goes next, and you are not part of it. The meeting where these things get decided is, by a coincidence that has stopped feeling like a coincidence, mostly men. You contributed the labour that built the thing being discussed, and yet when the discussion happens, your role is to keep the coffee coming and the children quiet. You have begun to notice the pattern with a clarity that is new and a little dangerous, the way a person notices a draft and then finally goes looking for the hole. The meeting is not officially closed to you. That is the maddening part. No one has ever said women may not speak, because saying it would violate every principle painted on the wall. The exclusion is softer and far more durable than a rule. It is built out of who holds the baby, who minds the pot, who gets talked over, who gets called emotional when she presses a point, until the room is, in practice, exactly as male as a boardroom while insisting it is nothing of the kind. Consider how a woman's contribution actually fares in that room on the rare occasion she makes it in. You say something practical, grounded, correct, drawn from the actual running of the actual place. It lands in a small pool of silence. The conversation resumes around it as if a window had briefly opened. 10 minutes later, a man says a near version of the same thing, and it is received as insight, and you watch your own point get adopted, rebranded, and credited. Greta, the same one who keeps the pill supply, said it plainest, in a low voice at the laundry tubs, where the men never go. She said the men have built a perfect machine, one where the women do the work that gives them the right to a say, and the doing of that work is exactly what keeps them too busy, too tired and too encumbered to claim it. Greta has stopped trying to win the meeting. Greta is starting to think about a different room entirely. Something is slowly turning inside you, kneeling there with the coffee. For a long time you took the exclusion personally, as a sign you were not articulate enough, not confident enough, not quite ready. Then you watched it happen to every competent woman on the land, one after another, and the personal explanations simply fell apart. It is not you. It was never you. It is the shape of the room, and you have started, quietly, to measure it. The decisions made in that room land on you hardest of all, which is the final insult. Where the commune moves, how the money goes, whether to take the risky new land, these set the terms of your daily life and your children's safety, and they are set by people who have never hauled the water or balanced the food budget or sat up with a sick child. The ones who bear the most consequence have the least say. You have heard that sentence before, about other places, in your mother's century. You did not expect to be living it here. So you keep pouring the coffee and you keep listening, and something cold and clear is forming behind your calm face. You are taking notes, not on paper, on the pattern itself. The men think the quiet woman with the pot is agreeing. The quiet woman with the pot is counting. The meeting ends, the decision is announced, and you receive it like weather, the way you always have. But the receiving feels different now, because you have finally named the thing, and a named thing can be changed. You gather the cups, which have heard every word and will, like you, say nothing tonight. You carry them out. And somewhere under the ordinary motions, a much older quiet is breaking. The kind that comes right before a woman stops asking to be let into the room and starts building one of her own. The bands are the bright centre of all this, and around the bands orbit the young women, and the position available to most of you is the one called groupie. It is presented as access, as being where the energy is, as proximity to the men who make the sound everyone came for. The compensation is the proximity itself. There is no wage, no credit, and no line in the liner notes. You learn the same lesson the kitchen taught you, that the women supply the support and the men supply the legend, and the arrangement is described, always, as a gift you are lucky to receive. The music itself is genuine and glorious, and that is what makes the whole thing so seductive. The ballrooms pulse with it, the lights swim, the sound goes straight through your sternum, and for the length of a song you genuinely are at the centre of the most alive thing happening in America. You are not wrong to want to be near it. The wanting is honest. It is what gets done with the wanting that turns out to be the old trade in a new costume. The exceptions come first, because they are dazzling and they matter. Janice can stand in front of any of those bands and outshine every man on the stage, her voice a force of nature, proof that a woman can be the legend and not just orbit it. But Janice is 1 in 10,000, and the system makes very few Janices and a great many groupies, and it tends to grind even the Janices down with a particular cruelty. The stage has room for 1 woman and 100 men, and everyone pretends that ratio is about talent. The groupie role itself is a job that refuses to admit it is one. You are there to make the men feel like gods, to be beautiful in the background, to provide comfort and admiration and a body when wanted, and to expect, in return, nothing you could name or claim. It is, structurally, an unpaid internship in adoration, where the promised compensation is the experience, and the experience is watching someone else become important while you hold his coat. Cassie spent 2 years close to a band you would know the name of, and Cassie will tell you, without bitterness now, that she was essential and invisible at once. She mended their clothes, soothed their fights, nursed their hangovers, and remembered their mothers' birthdays. And when the band got famous, she got a fond goodbye and a story no one would believe. Cassie was, in every functional sense, staff that the legend was structured never to acknowledge, because acknowledging her would spoil the myth that genius travels alone. The pattern is one you cannot stop seeing now, because it is the same one from the kitchen, and the garden, and the meeting, wearing sequins. The men make the visible thing, the thing that gets remembered, the album, the legend, the photograph. The women make that thing possible, with labour that is intimate, constant, and structurally erased. The support flows up, the credit stays at the top, and yet you will not let anyone tell you the music was nothing, or that the women around it were dupes, because that is its own kind of erasing. Those women had taste, nerve, and devotion, and they poured it into something genuinely beautiful, and the beauty was real, even if the deal was rotten. The tragedy is not that they loved the music, The tragedy is that loving it was only ever allowed to make them an audience, never an author. The set ends, the lights come up, the men carry their legend off the stage, and the women drift toward the work of the after, the rides home, the soothing, the coats. You stand in the emptying room with the sound still ringing in your chest, loving it and seeing it clearly at the same time. The music was worth it. The bargain was not. Both of those stay true, and you carry them out into the same emptying night. You came here at 15 with a knapsack and a head full of the same magazine articles that drew everyone else, and the gap between the article and the sidewalk is where you now live. The neighborhood is full of children pretending to be adults, pretending to be free. You do not know how to feed yourself, where to sleep safely, or whom to trust. And these are not small gaps. The survival school the local volunteers run is trying to teach exactly these things, because the brutal truth is that running away worked, and now you have to survive the place you ran to. The magazines made it sound like a destination. They ran the photographs, the flowers, the beautiful faces, the promise of a city where the young had built something kinder than the world their parents made. And some of that is even here, in glimpses. But the magazines did not run the photograph of a 15-year-old with no money and no plan 3 days after the bus. And that photograph is the one you are currently standing inside. Picture what 15 with nothing actually faces on these streets. You are prey, and the predators know the bus schedule. There are men who wait at the edges of this scene specifically for girls exactly like you, fresh off the bus, young, hungry, and eager to belong, with no one back home who will come looking fast. They offer food, a floor, a feeling of being wanted, and the bill for all of it arrives later, in a currency you did not agree to spend. The freedom that drew you is the same freedom that left the gate open for them. Joan works the survival school, and Joan is the closest thing to a guardian angel this neighborhood manufactures. Joan teaches the things no one thinks to teach until their absence nearly kills you: how to get a real meal, how to find a clean and safe place to sleep, how to spot the man whose kindness has a hook in it. Joan understands you cannot go back, and so she does the harder, kinder thing, which is to help you survive forward. The other girls are your real education, though, the network of them. They tell you which crash pads are safe and which are not. They tell you which man to never be alone with. They feed you the first week and expect the same from you toward the next arrival. And in that quiet chain of girls minding girls, there is more actual love than in any speech you will hear about it. The official movement preaches love. The girls just do it, with a sandwich and a warning. One thing breaks your heart a little, once you can see it. The runaways are mostly girls, and the girls ran for reasons, real ones. Homes that were not safe, fathers who were not kind, a whole generation of daughters fleeing the polished cruelty of the world. The magazines never photographed either. They did not run toward a fantasy out of foolishness. They ran away from something, and the running was brave, and the place they landed simply turned out to have its own set of teeth. You survive that first season the way they all do who survive it, by learning fast, attaching to the right women, and trading the dangerous innocence you arrived with for a wariness that will keep you alive. It is a loss, that innocence, and you feel it go, but it is the cost of the education, and you intend, with everything in you, to make it. Months later, you will be the older girl, the one who feeds the new arrival and tells her which man to avoid, passing the chain forward. The magazines will keep running the flowers. You will keep running the survival school in your own small way, one frightened new 15-year-old at a time, because somebody did it for you, and because it is, in the end, the truest thing this whole place ever taught you how to do. You are standing at the edge of a highway with your thumb out, because hitchhiking is how a woman with no car and no money covers the distance between the city and the land. Every ride is a small wager. Most drivers are exactly what they appear to be, ordinary people with a spare seat, and a few are not, and you have no reliable way of telling which is which until you are already moving. So you read faces fast, you keep your bag close, and you learn the particular alertness that travel requires when your only fare is trust. Hitchhiking is, in this era, almost respectable, a normal way for the young and broke to move across a very large country. The road is full of people doing it, thumbs out at every on-ramp, and a whole loose etiquette has grown up around it. For a man, it is mostly an adventure, with a budget of 0. For a woman, it is all of that plus a calculation that never fully switches off. The calculation runs constantly under everything. A car slows. In the 2 seconds before it stops, you take in everything. The driver, the number of them, the look of the back seat, the feeling in your gut that you have learned to respect more than any philosophy. You decide whether to get in. Sometimes you wave a car on and never explain why, because the why is just a cold feeling, and the cold feeling has been right enough times that you no longer argue with it. Dove taught you to never ride alone if you can help it, to pair up with another girl at the on-ramp so the wager is shared and witnessed. Dove taught you to sit by the door, to keep your hand near the handle, to name a brother who is expecting you at a specific time even when there is no brother. Dove turned travel into a craft with rules, and the rules have kept more girls safe than luck ever did. The rides themselves are often wonderful, and you hold on to that because it would be easy to let the fear eat the whole thing. Truck drivers who buy you a meal and show you pictures of their kids, old couples who fuss over you, fellow travelers who share everything they have for 100 miles and then vanish forever, leaving only a good hour behind. The road is full of ordinary human kindness, freely given to a stranger, and that kindness is genuine, worth the trip almost by itself. The shadow rides along, though, the one no girl on the road forgets. For every 100 decent drivers, there is the one who locks the doors, or takes the wrong exit, or lets the conversation curdle into something with a threat folded inside it. Every woman who hitchhikes for long has a story, or knows someone whose story ended worse, and that knowledge sits in the passenger seat beside you on every single ride, polite and silent and never quite asleep. The freedom of the open road has a toll, and the toll is collected only from some travellers. So you travel anyway, because you must, and you turn the danger into discipline the way women always turn danger into discipline. You pair up, you sit by the door, you invent the waiting brother, you trust the cold feeling in your gut. You cover the miles that way, alert, capable, and quietly watchful, carrying a vigilance the men beside you on the same road simply do not have to pack. A car slows now, an old station wagon, a woman driving, 2 kids in the back, and your whole body unclenches at the sight, the safest ride there is. You climb in, you thank her. You watch the city fall away behind you and the green country open up ahead, and for these miles, at least, the wager has paid and the road is simply beautiful, the way it was always advertised to be, and so rarely gets to purely be. The meal you cooked is ready, and now comes the part that reveals how the household actually works, which is the order in which people eat. You served it, so you eat last, or you eat standing, or you eat what is left after the men and the guests and the visiting seekers have filled their bowls. Nobody calls this a hierarchy, because hierarchy is exactly the thing this place was built to abolish. But the bowls empty in a reliable sequence, and your place in that sequence has been quietly assigned, the same way it was assigned in every kitchen you ever tried to leave. The table is supposed to be the proof of everything, the shared meal, the circle, the abundance flowing freely to all. And in the talk, it is. Everyone eats together, no one is turned away, the food belongs to the whole. The talk is genuinely beautiful and not entirely false. It simply leaves out the small choreography of who reaches first, who takes the most, who gets the warm centre of the pot, and who gets the scraped edges, and that choreography tells the truth the talk is busy obscuring. Watch how the sequence actually runs. The men eat first, not by decree but by drift, settling in confidently, filling their bowls deep, because no one ever taught them to wonder whether there would be enough left. The guests eat next, because hospitality is sacred. The children get managed somewhere in there. And you, who stood at the pot for 2 hours, eat whatever the bottom of it still holds, often standing, often cold, often after everyone else has already pushed back, satisfied. Pearl, the same one who diced the onions without crying, taught you the trick of eating a little while you cook, quietly, from the spoon, because she learned long ago that the cook who waits for her own table often waits for an empty pot. Pearl calls it taxing the kitchen. It is the only way she has found to guarantee herself a meal in a system that feeds her last, and calls the arrangement love. Pearl taxes the kitchen every single night, and she has never once been caught, and she has never once been full at the table. The portions tell the story even more plainly than the order. Watch who serves themselves without thinking, and who serves themselves with one eye on the pot. The men eat like men who have never doubted there would be more. The women eat like women who have spent their lives making sure there was, which means making sure of it for everyone but themselves. One thing lands hardest, scraping the cold edge of the pot. This was the exact arrangement of your mother's kitchen, the one you fled, the woman who served everyone, and ate standing at the counter and called it nothing. You came 2,000 miles and joined a revolution to escape that kitchen, and you have rebuilt it, plank for plank, with longer hair and a different pot. The hierarchy you ran from did not even need to follow you. It was already here, waiting, wearing beads. And still, you do not hate the table, because the table is also where the warmth is, the laughter, the children, the genuine fellowship of people who have chosen each other. The trouble is only that the warmth and the old injustice are served from the same pot, ladled by the same hand, yours, and you can no longer taste one without tasting the other. The meal is love and inequity in a single bowl, eaten standing up. The table empties, satisfied, into the evening, and you finally sit, alone, with whatever is left, in the quiet after the work. Pearl catches your eye from across the room and gives you the small private look of one kitchen taxer to another. You eat your cold, late and leftover portion. It is enough, barely, the way it is always just barely enough, and you make, somewhere behind your tired eyes, a note that you are done pretending the order of the bowls means nothing. The law has finally noticed the commune, and the notices have started to arrive, citing the missing permits, the missing plumbing, and the general fact of 40 people living somewhere the county would prefer they did not. You are the one home when the inspector knocks, because you are usually the one home. The men speak of standing firm on principle. You are doing a different calculation, the practical one, about where the children will sleep when the principal meets the bulldozer. Open land was a beautiful idea right up until the moment the county arrived with paperwork and a deadline. The founder of this particular dream was a man who threw the gates open and declared that access to the land would be denied to no one, a genuinely beautiful sentence that the county read as a code violation. The trouble with declaring that no one can be turned away is that everyone then arrives, and everyone has to use a bathroom, and that is precisely the kind of thing inspectors are employed to notice. Look at what the inspector actually sees when he steps out of his county car. He sees no septic permit, no electrical inspection, structures built by enthusiasts, open fires, and children who may or may not be enrolled in any school. He is not, mostly, a villain. He is a tired, ordinary, and faintly apologetic man with a clipboard, enforcing rules that exist because people used to die of exactly the conditions he is looking at. The clash is not good versus evil. It is the dream versus the plumbing code, and the plumbing code has lawyers. The response splits along the line you have come to expect. The men want to resist, to refuse, to make a stand, to turn the eviction into a glorious confrontation with the system. It is a thrilling idea, and it costs them personally almost nothing, because they are not the ones who will be calculating where an infant sleeps in February. You and the other mothers are running a quieter, colder set of numbers, and your math keeps arriving at answers the men find disappointingly practical. Ruth, who has weathered one of these before on another piece of land, tells you flatly what is coming, because she has seen the end of this movie. First the notices, then the fines, which no one can pay, then the court date, then the order, then eventually the heavy machinery, scraping clean a place where people actually lived, where babies were born, where a real if chaotic home stood. Ruth just starts packing early and tells the younger women to do the same. There is a hard lesson folded inside the eviction. The dream was built on the belief that you could walk off the map, past the last fence and the last water meter, and live on open land that answered to no one. But the land answered to a filing cabinet in town. It had a county, a deed, a zoning map, and a sheriff, and those things were patient. You can ignore all of it for years, but the county has a longer memory than any commune, and it tends to collect, with interest and a bulldozer. So while the men hold their meetings about resistance, you do the real work of the eviction, which is the same as all the other real work. You find out which families have somewhere to go. You sort what can be carried from what must be left. You make sure the children experience the upheaval as an adventure rather than a loss, performing calm you do not feel. The deadline comes, as deadlines do, indifferent to principle. Some stay to make their stand and are carried off making it. Most drift away in the days before, quietly, the women having packed the trucks while the speeches were still being given. You take a last look at the garden you weeded, the shack you warmed, the patch of ground where so much real life happened, and you carry your child toward whatever is next, holding, as always, both the grief and the plan in the same two hands. A few of you have started meeting on your own, without the men, ostensibly to talk about ordinary things, and something is happening in those conversations that does not have a name yet. One woman describes her week, another recognizes it instantly as her own. The pattern that each of you thought was a private failing turns out to be the same pattern in every house on the land. You are doing the most quietly radical thing available to you, which is comparing notes, and the arithmetic that emerges is going to be very hard for anyone to argue with. It started by accident, the way these things do, a few women sitting together while the men were off being important, talking about nothing, about the small grinding details of the days. And then someone said something true, something she had never said out loud, about feeling used, about doing everything and deciding nothing. And instead of the silence she braced for, she got a room full of nodding. Every woman there had felt the exact same thing, and everyone had assumed she was the only one. What that recognition does is more powerful than any speech. The moment she learns that every other woman feels it too, the story flips. It is no longer my flaw. It is our condition. And a thing every woman on the land feels is not a private failing. It is a fact about the house, plain as a draft under a door, and a fact about the house can be said out loud at the tubs, over and over, until it stops being a secret and starts being a plan. Greta, who keeps the pill and named the perfect machine at the laundry tubs, becomes something like the centre of these gatherings, not by appointing herself, but because she has been seeing the shape of it longest. Greta does not give speeches. Greta asks questions, the dangerous kind, the simple ones. Who cooks? Who decides? Who holds the baby while the future gets planned? Who eats last? The questions hang in the air, and the answers, said out loud in a circle of women, sound very different than they ever did in the silence of one tired head. The men, when they notice the meetings at all, find them unthreatening and a little sweet, the women having their little gatherings, which is exactly the misreading that lets the gatherings grow. There is no name on the door, no manifesto on the wall, nothing for them to argue with or shut down. There is just a handful of women, comparing the texture of their days, discovering in the comparison that the thing they were each carrying alone was never meant to be carried alone. Nothing in this room looks like a revolution. It looks like 6 tired women and a pot of bad coffee passed hand to hand. But you joined one revolution already, the one with the music and the open land, and it promised you everything and handed you the same old kitchen. This one, the quiet one at the tubs, the men have not thought to worry about yet. That is the only reason it is allowed to grow. You feel it in yourself, the shift, the way naming a weight changes how it sits on you. You came to these meetings tired and a little ashamed, certain your unhappiness was a personal failure of spirit. You are leaving them clear, steady, and quietly dangerous, certain of something else entirely, that the problem was never you, that it was the arrangement, and that arrangements are made by people and can therefore be unmade by them. The circle breaks up before the men wander back, the women returning to their pots and their children and their endless invisible work, outwardly unchanged. But something has shifted that will not shift back. You carry it out with you, quiet and certain, the knowledge that you are not alone and never were, and that a room full of women who have stopped blaming themselves is the one thing no machine, however perfect, was ever built to withstand. You are packing, which is a strange thing to do to a dream, and you are doing it with a clear head and a child on your hip. You are not leaving because the ideals were wrong. You are leaving because the labour was real and the recognition never came, and you have finally done the math on staying. In your hands you carry skills the movement never quite valued, how to grow food, deliver a baby, run a kitchen for 40, and stretch nothing into enough. You are about to walk these skills straight into the ordinary world, which is going to find them remarkably useful. Leaving is not a dramatic thing. In the end, there is no confrontation, no slammed door, no speech. There is just a morning when you load what you can carry and point yourself back toward the world you ran from, older, harder, and clearer now, carrying a small person who did not exist when you arrived. The dream does not try to stop you. The dream, you have learned, never needed you the way you needed to be needed. Consider what you actually take with you, because it is more than it looks. You arrived with a knapsack and some borrowed ideas. You leave with hands that can deliver a baby, keep a garden alive, preserve a harvest, nurse a fever, talk a panicking stranger back to earth, and feed a crowd from almost nothing. These are not small things. These are the deepest and most necessary skills there are, and you learn them for real, on your knees, in the cold, while the men were explaining the universe. The world you walk back into is not the same one you left, and neither are you. You will not become your mother, silent at the counter, because you have seen the arrangement too clearly now to ever fully disappear back into it. You carry the questions Greta taught you, the dangerous simple ones, and you will keep asking them in kitchens and clinics and rooms full of men who think the meeting is closed for the rest of your life. The commune did not give you freedom. It gave you, by failing to, the exact knowledge of what freedom would have to mean. This is what becomes of women like you. You scatter back into the ordinary country and you carry the real parts of the dream with you like seeds. The midwifery becomes a movement. The garden becomes the food on 1,000 tables. The brown rice and the tofu, once proof you were a freak, end up on every grocery shelf in America, sold at a markup by the children of the world you fled. The dream did not die. It got absorbed, quietly, into the bloodstream of the ordinary. You do not feel bitter, though you have earned the right to. You feel something closer to clear. The years were real. The work was real. The love, in its tangled, compromised way, was also real. And so was the child now reaching for your hair, who is the best thing the whole long experiment ever made. The true legacy was never the communes, which mostly turned to mud and memory, nor the men, who mostly went home and got jobs and told the story with themselves at the centre. The true legacy is the competence and the clarity now walking out the gate in 1,000 pairs of women's hands, headed back into the world to change it from the inside, one kitchen, one clinic, one closed meeting at a time. You were not the support staff of the revolution. You were carrying the part of it that actually survives. You settle the child on your hip, you pick up the bag, and you walk down the dirt road toward the highway, where you will put out your thumb one last time and catch a ride into the rest of your life. Behind you, the land goes quiet. You are not leaving the dream behind. You are the part of it that gets to keep going. So that was a night in the life of a hippie woman. You hauled the water before dawn, stirred the pot the size of a small boat, milked a goat named Persephone who respected none of your ideals, talked a boy named Wolf down from the walls, taxed the kitchen with a spoon so you would actually eat, and stood in a fluorescent welfare office so the revolution's children could have dinner. You went barefoot on principle and paid for it with your foot. You were free, everyone kept telling you, while you did absolutely all of the laundry. It would be easy to make the women of that movement into a joke or a lesson, and they were neither. They were young, mostly, and brave in a way the magazines never bothered to photograph. They learned real skills with their hands, kept each other alive at the laundry tubs and the survival school, and built, out of patchouli and exhaustion and stubborn love, something the world later quietly took for granted. And the strange, lovely thing is how much of it survived. The midwifery, the gardens, the brown rice and tofu that now sit unremarkable on every shelf, all of it walked off that land in 1,000 pairs of women's hands and changed the ordinary world from the inside. They did not get the credit then. They mostly just got the work. But the work was the part that lasted. Thank you for spending this quiet hour with them, and with me. Wherever you are listening from tonight, I am genuinely glad you are here. Now, let the day go. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let the room go soft and dark around you, and let your breathing slow until it is the only thing you are keeping track of. You do not have to haul anything before dawn. You do not have to stir any pot. There is nothing left to carry tonight, and no one waiting on you to carry it. Let your eyes close. Let the warmth settle over you like a blanket someone else, for once, tucked in. Sleep well,